Today on Dr. Phil. Missing van life vlogger Gabby Petito.
Hello, and good morning.
My child is nowhere to be found, and I'm not getting any answers on where to even start.
Do you have a theory about where she is?
If I use my gut feeling, I'm going to be on the floor crying.
Last seen with her boyfriend August 24th.
You never said, hey, just so you know, I'm home with your daughter's van, but not your daughter?
No, nothing. We called Brian, we called the mom, we called the dad. You think when someone says they're about to call the police to find your missing kid, you would return a phone call?
The Dr. Phil interview.
Is she vulnerable?
I think she's in trouble. I think she's hurt. She can't survive on her own. She doesn't have those skills. If she's hurt or worse, I hope they get what's coming.
Now.
Do you believe Brian has hurt your daughter?
In my gut, I believe something bad happened.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, a story that has everyone in America talking. A 22-year-old woman goes on a cross-country van trip with her fiancé. But then, he returns alone. Where is Gabby Petito? And now her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, is missing as well.
Gabrielle Petito was documenting her cross-country adventure with her 23-year-old fiancé, Brian Laundrie.
Gabby Petito never goes outside.
In late August, their posts slowed down, and so did communication.
They seem to have an adoring relationship, judging by these lovey-dovey images.
I loved hearing about where she was. She would send me pictures every day of these beautiful places. I mean, it looked like a fairy tale.
The fiancé reportedly returned with the camper van, but no Gabby.
Parents of a missing woman from Long Island need help finding her.
She was on a cross-country trip when communication suddenly shut down.
22-year-old Gabrielle Petito was reported missing over the weekend. Her last location is believed to have been in Wyoming.
A witness reported a physical altercation between the couple August 12th. Their van was then stopped for a welfare check.
New body cam video was released today showing the missing Long Island native's encounter with police a few weeks before she vanished.
Body camera footage in Utah shows Gabby crying in her van at the side of the road outside Arches National Park during an emotional interview with Moab police.
You're 22, right? So I'm choosing not to cite you today. So you are not going to be charged with it. All right? But this is what I do have to do. I am separating the two of you tonight.
The two said they'd pushed and shoved one another outside a grocery. Gabby scratched Brian, but told police they were in love and didn't want to press charges. Police concluding it was not a domestic assault, but a mental health crisis.
Laundrie is reportedly not cooperating with authorities and has hired a lawyer.
We don't eat, we don't sleep. We are constantly on social media talking to everyone we can, trying to get leads.
This just in, the FBI saying tonight they do not know the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie.
This evening, police were seen entering Laundrie's home in Northport, Florida. Laundrie is a person of interest in Petito's disappearance.
My friend's life is at stake, and I would really just appreciate it if he would speak up. Even just one little thing gives us a place to start. I want to find my friend.
Gabby's father, Joseph Petito, joined me to make a desperate plea for answers about his daughter's whereabouts. He says he will stop at nothing to find Gabby and bring her home safely. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Doc. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, and I'm very glad to meet you, but very sorry for the circumstance.
I appreciate that.
I certainly hope that we find Gabby and that she's okay. Do you have a theory about where she is and what's going on right now?
I have a gut feeling and I have a thought in my head, and the gut feeling's my fear, and I'm using the thought in my head as my focus, because if I use my gut feeling, I'm going to be on the floor crying.
So your fear, as any father when their daughter's missing, is that there's something, foul play has taken place and that something's wrong with her, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's too long to not have anyone speak to her.
Well, she had gone on this road trip with Brian Laundrie, and let me get a little history about them. When did they begin dating and move to Northport, Florida to live with his parents?
Yeah, so about 2.5 years. They've known each other since high school.
How would you describe Brian? How well did you know him, and what was he like?
I've met him a bunch of times. You know, I've never liked any of Gabby's boyfriends. Let's be real. I've never actually called one of her boyfriends by their real name, ever. I've always made up names for them, to be honest with you.
What was your name for Brian?
Brienne.
Uh-huh. Why that?
Oh, why not? I always tried to use the female version of the boyfriend's names, just to intimidate them a little bit.
Right. How did he respond?
Oh, they laughed. So as the years progressed, I think she prepared them for when they met me.
Yeah, got them ready.
And Brian was always respectful. You know, I can't say he wasn't.
What kind of relationship did they have? How would you describe it?
There's no red flags that stuck out. Nothing that popped in my head that, listen, this boy is, you know, it's not a good boy. If there were, I would have discouraged going on the trip.
Had she ever done a trip like this before?
She did. She did it with the same boy. Not a van life type of style where they did their own, you know, camper conversion. But she took, we leased her a Nissan Sentra. They did a cross-country trip to California and San Francisco, stopping at a bunch of stops and stuff like that. It was, she had a great time. So it's not even like this is their first time doing something like this.
No problems with it at all?
No.
So you had no concerns about her going off and doing this again?
I had concerns. I mean, come on, a parent has concerns, you know, especially because it's gonna be a few months, let's be real. But nothing indicate we'd be here.
Did you ever witness them fighting?
No.
Did she ever talk to you about them fighting?
No, because listen, I'm a protective father. If my daughter cries, I'm going to fix the problem. You know what I mean? That's how I am. I don't like to see that. That's not something she's going to bring up to me because she knows that I'm going to get involved real quick.
Were you aware of the engagement, and did you go along with it? Were you okay with it? Yeah.
Listen, you know what? Listen, at the end of the day, if my daughter's going to be happy and she loves you and you love her, which is what I saw, I'm okay. You know, that's all I care about. You know, and that's it. My daughter's happiness.
Let me ask you about her. A few things about her. I heard her say to the police some things about OCD. I want to play this little clip about her saying she was OCD, and I want you to react to her demeanor at the time and then also what she says.
You want to tell me what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him, I just like, I guess my vibe is like I hear him be like in a bad mood, and I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning, so I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it. So that's kind of been like a, I don't know. He's like down there. I don't know. We've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of your OCD?
He told me I needed to calm down. Yeah, but I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time, and he really stresses me out. And this is a rough morning.
Had you seen that before?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't watched the whole video. I can't bring myself to watch the whole video. You know, because I don't like to see my daughter cry.
Well, of course, I understand that. Was that out of character for her? Is that kind of her? How would you characterize that in terms of her range of emotion?
No, it's out of character for her. You know, listen, she likes things in their place. So that's a small confined area. Making sure that everything's put away so you're not stumbling on things doesn't seem OCD to me. She might be just classifying it as that because, you know, that's the common term for it. But she didn't have manic issues or mental instability or anything like that. Sounds like they were having an argument because he didn't believe in her that she could get this done.
So When she uses the term OCD, you think she's using that in just common parlance, not diagnostically?
Yeah, it's not like she was ever diagnosed with OCD or any other issues where she needed medication for or anything like that. Never. You know, you're in a confined area. Come on, who doesn't like a clean, tidy place?
Were you aware that they had an encounter with the police on August 12th?
I wasn't, and that's not something you're going to tell your dad. Because if you tell your dad something like I said, I'm a fix it. I'm an overprotective dad. If I find my daughter's upset, I'm going to come out there real quick and I'm going to handle that problem.
When did you find out about it, and how did you find out about it?
Through the media. That's why it's hard for me to bring myself to watch the whole thing. Because when I see my daughter like that, it's hard to handle. And I really got to focus. And to be honest, all that stuff comes second. Like, that's problem number 2. Right now, problem number 1 is get Gabby home, right? I can ask her those questions when I have her here next to me.
Right.
Until then, all that stuff doesn't matter, because I talked to her afterwards. Her mom has talked to her afterwards. I FaceTimed her, you know, all this stuff. And she was working really hard on that website. So I get stresses and all this stuff, but no, something like that, you're not going to tell your pop.
Right. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of having been trained as a forensic psychologist. I'm trying to see if there's anything that would explain leading up to her disappearance. I'm trying to see if there's anything that you see that's a red flag that I might need to see that would explain what would get her so upset that she would go off on her own. And I'm trying to wrap my head around how Brian would drive all of these days back across the country, having left with your daughter and returning without her and not saying anything about it. What do you say to yourself about that?
Coming up.
I teach my son and my youngest son and Gabby to stand up for your mistakes. All right, if you do something wrong, you apologize and you take what's coming, because that's what decent people do. Obviously, they skip that role in parenting.
Missing van life woman's father speaks out. The Dr. Phil interview continues.
I'm trying to wrap my head around how Brian would drive across the country, having left with your daughter and returning without her and not saying anything about it. What do you say to yourself about that?
It's not even his van. I mean, I can say a lot of things that aren't appropriate for TV. Like I said before, I'm a protective dad, you know, and I got a lot of questions. Well,
let's talk about those questions, because they need to be asked, and maybe somebody will know something about it. But he leaves and drives home without her. What do you say to yourself about that?
First of all, you came home without it. Then you had the van for 10 days in your driveway. So now I got, what happened with the van? Did you clean it? Did your parents help you clean it? Did they help cover up a crime? You know, after the fact, I want to know. Like, I got these questions. You know, like, did you stole a car over across how many states? You know, can you be arrested for that? Like, I got a lot of questions. Until I get my daughter back, I don't give a damn about the questions. I got to get my baby girl back.
Well, but that may lead to getting her back and finding out where she was. He drove across the country for how many days without telling you she was missing? 7?
Well, I guess he was home on the 1st, right? So it takes at minimum from Wyoming, it's a 2-day drive.
Right, but you last heard from her on August 27th, and he arrives home on the 1st, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 7 days between when you last heard from her and when he arrives home without her.
Well, there was another text message to her mom on the 30th.
But she doesn't believe that was from Gabby. What did the text say?
No reception in Yosemite. And we thought it was actually like a autocorrect where she meant Yellowstone.
So there's this text message that just says no service in Yosemite. What were the last words that you spoke to your daughter?
We were working on her website. You know, she was telling me about the trip, where she was going, and, you know, all this other stuff. She, said, listen, I'm going to have some bad reception, in certain spots, so I'll call you when I can. You know, I let mom know I'm going to be calling her. All right, cool. You know, and then we're working on a website and trying to, she had some problems making the email address work, you know, for Nomadic Static that she was doing. So I'm not a techie guy, but I sat down at my computer and we YouTubed it and we figured it out together. You know, I sent her some food through my Domino's app and we would just laugh and having a good time, you know, trying to make it work. It was frustrating off the start when we couldn't get the email to work, but we got it.
Okay, and that was when?
That was on the 21st of August.
All right.
Because me and Gabby talk once, twice a week. Her mom speaks to her 2-3 times a week. My son talks to her, you know, a couple times a week. So, you know, it's always someone talking to her and you're like, oh no, I haven't, you know, and you don't think anything, you travel in the country. But then it started to become a week. You know, now it's 10, now we got a problem. You know what I mean? Now you're 10 days, you know what I mean? We got a problem, you know, and that's when it was it.
During that time, he never called you? He never said, hey, just so you know, I'm home with your daughter's van, but not your daughter. She's out there in America somewhere. I just left. She went off with some people, or she's in a hotel. Nothing, nothing, zero.
No, nothing. Gabby's mom last talked to her physically on the 25th. Right. On the 30th, she hears, you know, she gets a text message that there's not a lot of service in Yosemite. She, you know, you can think it's an autocorrect or whatever. You don't think anything of it, you know, but then come the, you know, the 1st, the 2nd, 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, you're not hearing from her. All right, because you're camping, there's not a lot of service. I'll hear from her in a couple of days. And then, you let two days more go by. Now you start calling people and stuff like that. You're like, all right, maybe, you know, whatever. And then we started to, we tried on the 10th to do, like I said, the missing person. We finally got it in on the 11th. You know what I mean? So like, it just became too much.
Did you call Brian during or at the end of this 10 days?
We called Brian, we called the mom, we called the dad, we called the sister, we called every number we could find. And we got no phone calls were picked up, no text messages were returned. So we texted them. Have you seen our kids? You know, we haven't heard from them, you know, in a while. We're getting really nervous and we're about to call the police. And you think when someone says they're about to call the police to find your missing kid, you would return a phone call? I mean, that's just what logic would dictate for normal people. And you don't get any response? I mean, that just makes it more and more concerning, doesn't it?
So mom, dad, sister, Brian, nobody took your calls?
No one.
Okay, well, let me do a hypothetical here and flip the table. If this was the other way around and you had a son that went off with somebody's daughter and came back without her and the family called you, wouldn't you pick up the phone and answer it and tell them everything you knew to help explain the situation?
All right, so let's expand on that a little bit more, right? So my son comes home without his companion who lives in my house. Remember, Gabby lived there.
Right.
So if he's back at so my son's back at my house without the person who lives in my house, and once he gives me an explanation, I'm on the phone with the parents saying, we got a problem because I'm a good person. We got a problem and we got to handle it quick. And whatever the problem is, however the scenario is, you know, I teach my son and my youngest son and Gabby to stand up for your mistakes. All right, if you do something wrong, you apologize and you take what's coming because that's what decent people do. Obviously, they skip that role in parenting.
Would you have expected him to call you if he was leaving Utah or wherever without her and say, sir, she won't get back in the van, she won't come home, I'm leaving, I'm coming home, do you want to come out here? Would you expected him to say, I'm leaving and coming home without your daughter?
Coming up.
Gabby's 5'3", maybe 110 pounds. You think it's okay to leave a young 22-year-old person in the middle of nowhere?
So how much money do you think she had?
We now return to Dr. Phil's interview with the father of the missing van life woman, Gabby Petito.
Would you have expected him to call you if he was leaving Utah or wherever without her and say, sir, she won't get back in the van, she won't come home, I'm leaving, I'm coming home, do you want to come out here?
The problem with that is that van was Gabby's. So he can leave that van right there. I'm jumping on a plane, tell me where she's at, and I'll be there in a few hours. If I got to get a private plane to get there, I will do that right this second. I don't care what it takes. So he better walk his little behind over to somewhere else and figure out how he's going to get home to his parents, because that van is in her name, not the other way around.
So if he comes home, he shouldn't have brought her van home, is what you're saying. He leaves that with her.
Gabby's 5'3", maybe 110 pounds. You think it's okay to leave a young 22-year-old person in the middle of nowhere?
Right. So how much money do you think she had?
She had money, but not enough money to spend a month's time in a hotel with food and stuff like that.
Now, this van is hers, so not his, so you could go pick that van up. Why has that not happened?
It's in police impound, and I'm letting them, they have the van, they're processing it. There's so much information, Dr. Phil. I'm overwhelmed with how far this story has gone in terms of the world. I mean, it's across the globe. It's wild. And I am so humbled. Can I just say something to you?
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you, again, because you're taking the time to push this story out there and essentially save my life. So I can never repay you for that. But if I ever meet you in person, man, I would like to shake your hand and say thank you so much, because I can't thank you enough. Well, and that's just just a fact.
Well, I hope we meet when we're celebrating finding her and solving this puzzle.
We'll bring her home. We'll bring her home, and she's going to be home safe. That's what I got to go with in my head. Well, until I'm told otherwise, I'm going to be on the floor crying. So
I understand, and as a father, I'm praying with you and praying that we find her and she's got some explanation for this. Now, at this point, you don't get the van, and you don't pick up the van. The FBI has it now. He doesn't pick up the phone. His family doesn't pick up the phone. But when he does pick up the phone, he picks it up to hire an attorney. How quickly did he do that?
I don't know how fast he did. And that's some of the questions that I have, like, when did you get an attorney? Did your parents aid and abet you in a crime? All this other stuff.
What was your reaction when you heard he was refusing to speak to the police?
I screamed. My wife couldn't even console me. Like, I thought the worst. That's my baby. I was 20 years old when Gabby was born. She saved my life. I was going the wrong way in life. Made me the person I am today. So I broke down. I was crying, screaming. And then I composed myself, and I got to get her home, because he's not helping. I'm not allowed to contact him. I'm not allowed to be anywhere, go anywhere near him. And if I did, all it's going to do is stop me from the primary focus of finding Gabby. So I'm doing what I know best, bring my daughter home. That's all I can do right now.
Coming up.
Their child is home. My child is nowhere to be found, and I'm not getting any answers on where to even start. So don't sit there and tell me on how difficult it is for you, because you got reporters on your block.
Where is Gabby? Where is she?
My heart bleeds for you.
And later.
If she's hurt or worse, I hope they get what's coming. And that includes his folks. That is not how you raise a child. Right now, in my opinion, you're a coward.
You guys have never been more relevant than you are today.
Our body language experts return.
There are some things that people can look at to determine if somebody is lying.
In an interrogation situation, you can design your questions to elicit that behavior.
The search for the truth goes deeper.
Our brains are designed to find threat and then to respond to that threat. That brain is primitive and it's taking over.
Fill in the blanks.
People need to be tuned into these kind of things.
Available now on Apple Podcast and Stitcher.
Dr. Phil's interview with Gabby Petito's father continues.
The FBI now looking for Brian Laundrie. His lawyer tells us his location is unknown.
Dozens of people lining up outside his house, demanding answers on Gabby Petito's disappearance.
Where is Gabby? Where is she?
Officers going inside, speaking with family.
You know where Gabby is? Can you tell us anything?
Evidence bags taken inside the home.
Bring Gabby home!
Gabby's parents praying she's found.
I just want to take my daughter and save her and hug her and protect her.
As the country demands to know where she is.
Well, he hasn't spoken to you. He hasn't spoken to the police. He hired an attorney, and his attorney released this statement. The attorney said, "This is understandably an extremely difficult time for both the Petito and Laundrie family. It is our understanding that a search has been organized for Ms. Petito in or near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. On behalf of the Laundrie family, it is our hope that the search for Ms. Petito is successful and that Ms. Petito is reunited with her family. On the advice of counsel, the Laundrie family is remaining in the background at this juncture and will have no further comment."
You want me to break that down one by one for you?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to start with the opening line. All right. It's really hard on the Laundrie family and the Petito family. Well, my child is nowhere to be found, and I'm not getting any answers on where to even start. So don't sit there and tell me on how difficult it is for you because you got reporters on your block.
Where is Gabby?
Where is she?
My heart bleeds for you. Then there was, I want the search to be successful. Well, I don't know about you, but when I want something to be successful, I will partake and help to make sure it's successful, not sit in the background, all right? If you love this person and she's your fiance, then you should turn around and, I don't know, lead the darn charge. Like, I should be number 2, you should be number 1. But he's sitting there behind his mom like he's 4 years old. And to be honest with you, I said something on a previous interview, and then I'm gonna bring up, if that's okay with you. I apologize.
No, please.
I heard yesterday Cassie, the sister's interview, and I reacted emotionally without hearing the entire interview. So I would like to personally apologize to Cassie Laundrie, because I heard through that interview that she hasn't talked to her brother and she wishes she could help, and they're not talking to her from what I understand. So I want to apologize to her because I jumped to conclusion, and that is wrong of me. And if you can talk to your parents and pressure them into, say something. Listen, print out a map, draw a circle, and fill it into an airplane and throw it in the front yard. I don't care. You don't have to say a thing. Just tell me where to start. We'll start. I mean, you're going from Wyoming to Florida. That's a lot of ground.
Well, she spoke out and says she loves Gabby. What's your reaction?
I don't doubt it. Gabby's a lovable person. She's an amazing girl. How could you not love her? She might just be as frustrated as we are. I don't know. And I passed judgment, and that was wrong of me. So Cassie Laundrie, I apologize.
Well, you said in an open plea to Brian's parents, in an open letter, you said, quote, "We believe you know the location where Brian left Gabby. We beg you to tell us. Gabby lived with you for over a year. She was going to be your daughter-in-law. How can you keep her location hidden? Please, if you or your family have any decency left, please tell us where Gabby is located. Tell us if we are even looking in the right place."
Yeah.
So you believe that Brian has at least confided in the family where he last saw her, where he left her.
Missing van life woman's father speaks out. The Dr. Phil interview continues.
Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, we are writing this letter to ask you to help find our daughter. We understand you are going through a difficult time, and your instinct is strong to protect your son. We ask you to put yourselves in our shoes. We haven't been able to sleep or eat, and our lives are falling apart.
So you believe that Brian has at least confided in the family where he last saw her, where he left her.
Yeah, I do. I mean, how could you not? Tell me the last spot you saw her. I mean, let's hypothetically, if that text message was from Gabby on the 30th, because from Wyoming to Florida, it's 2,500 plus miles, right?
Right.
So that would mean you last saw her where? Where in between, Florida and Wyoming did you last see her? So when was the last time you saw my daughter? Tell me that, because that would be our starting point. Instead, he gave me the number to his attorney. That sound like someone who loves you?
And you would be willing to talk to him off the record. He just could tell you privately what he knows.
I will turn around and put my hands like this, turn my head, close my eyes, put a folded piece of paper in it with an answer, and I would walk away if that means I get my daughter back.
Right.
I'll let the authorities and everyone else handle that. Nothing matters. Nothing matters except getting her home. I don't care what happens to Brian at this moment. I'm getting Gabby home safe. That is it.
Have they located your daughter's phone? And I believe they have. Where did it last ping and pick up a location?
To be honest with you, I do not know, and they won't tell me that either, because I actually asked, and they said, we can't tell you that. And I get it. It's an investigation.
If you are just gut up honest with yourself, do you believe Brian has hurt your daughter?
Dr. Phil's interview with Gabby Petito's father continues.
Do you believe Brian has hurt your daughter?
Yeah, she wouldn't do this. It's too long. All right. In my gut, I believe something bad happened. But if I go with my gut right now, Dr. Phil, I'm going to be on the floor crying, man. And I can't. I got a job to do, and I'm not going to stop until I have her. I can't focus on it, man. And I apologize. I can't focus on it.
I understand. Listen, I'm just trying to see what your thoughts are. Is it possible that he neglected her, left her somewhere, and somebody else hurt her on his watch, and he's ashamed of it?
In theory, maybe. But then you stole her car. But then it goes back to the original problem. You stole her car. That's her van. So you left her in the middle of nowhere and didn't tell a soul. And your first call was to an attorney. How would he know to get an attorney? If you did nothing wrong, seriously, Miss Petito, I left your daughter at the Grand Tetons. We had an argument. I took her van and I went home. Well, all right, I'll let the authorities handle the theft of the car. I'm gonna go get my daughter, whatever. You made the phone call. So that means my daughter would be here right now because I would have picked her up on the day he called, the day he got home. Or how about this? Call me on the day that you started traveling home so I can get her before you got to the comfort of your lazy boy and home-cooked meals from your mom and your dad.
While your daughter's out on the street somewhere.
I don't know. And I don't even know where to begin.
Have you thought about filing charges for Grand Theft Auto in hopes that maybe they can at least interrogate him?
I brought the idea up to the FBI, but they're handling it the way they want to handle it. If I get my daughter back and I can hold her, whatever happens after that, I'm good. She's safe. It'll be what it'll be. If she's hurt or worse, I hope they get what's coming. And that includes his folks. Because I'll tell you, right now, they are just as complicit in my book. That is not how you raise a child. You raise your children to stand up and own up to their mistakes. As a man, that is what I do. As a father, from father to father, he should be doing that too. And I'm sorry, I understand protecting your kid and all that other stuff, but right now, in my opinion, you're a coward.
My theory is people who have nothing to hide nothing. That may be the first place they look, but if there's nothing to see, what's the problem?
And you know what's interesting? First of all, there were 2 statements put out by their attorney. 2. Neither of those statements stated that he had no involvement with her disappearance. Why? So that's 1. 2, if he truly is innocent, and let's just say, he's innocent and he got a lawyer up because he doesn't want to get caught in a trap. Okay, but then you would still work with authorities on how to get her back. There is no scenario where you clam up the way he has that doesn't, at least perception or my emotionally drained optics, come to the conclusion that you're the guilty party. I don't know for sure, but that's the way it looks at the moment, doesn't it?
It does. Again, as a forensic psychologist, if you will allow me, I would like to show you one other clip of your daughter to give me some information about it. It will help me. This is when they're pulled over, because I want to know what this says about the relationship itself. I'd like to take a look at that and see if you see anything there that tells me anything.
What's going on? How come you're crying?
I'm sorry, we've just been fighting this morning. Some personal issues.
It was a long day. We were here camping yesterday, and camping got scout supplies and stuff. I'm sorry I hit the bump there.
I was distracting him from driving. I'm sorry.
Can I get you to step out of the vehicle for me, man?
Yeah.
Just hang tight right there. Do you mind if I take your keys and just put them on your hood?
You got it. I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you. Oh, no, you're fine. I'm going to go ahead and close your door.
She's a very apologetic there, and the second part of this is when there's conversation about whether there was any hitting. Let's take a look at that.
Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, but then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you. Because, you know, where did he hit you? Don't worry, be honest. He slapped your face or what? Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. So has he been drinking?
No, we don't drink.
Clearly there was physical contact. Is that out of the ordinary?
I'm not with them all the time, so I'm going to say yes. That's only speculation. I have no idea. I think that's more on hope than anything.
How worldly and streetwise is Gabby in terms of her ability to survive in the woods, on the street, out there? Is she that type of young woman, or is she vulnerable?
Any which way I slice it, I think she's vulnerable, you know, and I think she's in trouble. I think she's hurt. I can't imagine. She's not a survivalist. She's a camper. You know, a camper, you put all your stuff in your car. You know, she can't survive on her own. She doesn't have those skills, no.
Well, I just want to ask you one last thing. On the off chance that Gabby is somewhere in a shelter, in some situation, circumstance where she is watching this, what do you want to say to her? On the off chance that Gabby is somewhere in a shelter, in some situation, circumstance where she is watching this, what do you want to say to her?
Gabby, let me come get you. I will bring you to my home, and I will shelter you from all this crap until you're able to handle it, until you're ready. I don't care about anything else than my daughter's well-being. I got big shoulders. I can handle it. All right. When you're ready, we'll have you come out. Until then, we will protect you. Don't worry.
Well, that's a good message for her. Can we add your wife? Hi, Tara. Good to meet you. Sorry for the circumstance. Thank you for talking to us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Well, I'm sharing with Joe objective number one, and that's to find Gabby and get her home.
Yes.
And I guess my second objective is to inspire the Laundrie family to break their silence and join this effort to bring her home. And people who have nothing to hide nothing. This is not a good look. There's no way this is going to turn out well by being silent. It just isn't.
We're just trying to stay hopeful and persistent to see if, you know, get her name out there, get her pictures out there. I know it is getting out there to help bring her home.
I have never seen such strength, I've never seen such courage, and I've never seen such focus as you guys are bringing to this. And I can tell you that if you will keep the heat on here, two things can happen. It will keep people's focus on this situation. We're going to keep a big bright light on it, and hopefully you can inspire his family to come forward and give you information. There's absolutely no way in hell that he doesn't know more than you know.
Please, please.
We're begging.
I'm begging.
We're begging. Parents, just tell us something, just so we're heading in the right direction to find her.
Well, that's the thing. And look, lawyers have clients, and they have this client. Your daughter's not a client. This is not a case. This is your precious daughter, and you need the information. And damn it, do the right thing. Step up and give every piece of information you know to help find this precious young woman, whatever the circumstance is. You have a moral imperative to do that.
Man, I couldn't have said it better, Dr. Phil. I thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate everything you're doing, man. I can't thank you enough. Please, just keep it up as long as you can, as much as you can. That's all I can ask.
Well, we're going to do that. Let's find her and get her home.
Thank you very much, please.
This is not Dr. Phil to Joe. This is dad to dad. Let's find her and get her home.
That's all I need first.
That's what we need.
That's
number one.
Goal one. That is it.
Today on Dr. Phil, from van life to vanished.
Human remains were discovered, consistent with the description of Gabrielle "Gabby" Petito.
Inside the disappearance and death of Gabby Petito.
I've gotten information that they spotted Gabby's remains in a grove of trees. So she wasn't buried.
Her fiance's strange behavior.
He came home in her car without her, and nobody's watching him.
The new crime scene.
He shouldn't have been able to leave that house.
How did Brian Laundrie get out of that home and nobody saw a thing?
The videos that might hold clues.
You may notice him wringing his hands and rocking.
This is called the fig leaf. He hasn't done this up to this point.
His behavior is self-centered, and it's designed exclusively to protect him.
She's been called the missing van life vlogger. But today, Gabby Petito is no longer missing. Authorities say they found the body of a young woman who appears to be Gabby in the Wyoming wilderness. In July, Gabby set off to document a cross-country adventure with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. But after weeks on the road, Brian showed up back home in Gabby's van, but without Gabby. He reportedly hired a lawyer and refused to speak to police about her whereabouts. Today, Gabby has been found, but her fiancé, Brian, is now missing. His parents called the police to their Florida home to report he had not been seen or heard from since September 14th, when he left with a backpack to a nearby nature reserve. But Gabby's family claims he's not missing. They say he's hiding.
Police in Northport, Florida say they are saddened and heartbroken to learn Petito was found dead. Authorities revealed Sunday afternoon that they believe they have found remains of the Blue Point, Long Island native in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. The cause of death has not been determined.
22-year-old Gabrielle Petito was reported missing over the weekend. Her last location is believed to have been in Wyoming.
I'd like to report a domestic dispute. I'm right on the corner of Main Street by Moonflower. We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and they drove off. The white van, Florida license plate.
Okay, you said it's a white van?
White Ford Transit.
New body cam video was released today showing the missing Long Island native's encounter with police a few weeks before she vanished.
Well, I'm choosing not to cite you today, so you are not going to be charged with it.
Police concluding it was not a domestic assault, but a mental health crisis.
On August 25th, Gabby called her mom to say they were in Wyoming. To the shock of her parents, Gabby's fiance returned home to Northport, Florida. Gabby was not with him.
Did he harm Gabby? Because if he did, then he stole her car and drove it across state lines.
Gabby's father, Joe, is fuming, learning that Laundrie has never uttered a word to Gabby's family about her whereabouts.
Laundrie is reportedly not cooperating with authorities and has hired a lawyer.
This just in, the FBI saying tonight they do not know the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie.
Laundrie hasn't been seen in days. His family told police he left on Tuesday and on Friday reported him missing. That's when police and the FBI were seen searching the Laundrie family home as about 100 people were gathered outside.
Where is Gabby? Where is she?
By air and by land, police conducted a massive search for Laundrie.
Four-wheelers, canines, drones, and more than 50 people from multiple different law enforcement agencies searching 25,000 acres for Brian Laundrie. He left with a backpack telling his parents he was going to the park.
New developments in the disappearance of Gabby Petito. The FBI is now searching the Florida home of her fiancé, Brian Laundrie.
Northport, Florida police and the FBI spent much of Monday morning searching and removing evidence from the home of Brian Laundrie.
Police, search warrant.
Laundrie's family told authorities they haven't seen him since September 14th. The spokesperson for the police department told CBS News he is confident they will find him.
We sat down with Gabby's father, Joe Petito, for his last and only in-depth interview before the tragic discovery of a young woman was made.
Gabby Petito never goes outside.
Do you have a theory about where she is?
I have a gut feeling and I have a thought in my head. The gut feeling's my fear, and I'm using the thought in my head as my focus. It's too long to not have anyone speak to her.
He leaves and drives home without her. What do you say to yourself about that?
I got a lot of questions. What happened with the van? Did you clean it? Did your parents help you clean it? Did they help cover up a crime? I got a lot of questions. Until I get my daughter back, I don't give a damn about the questions. I got to get my baby girl back.
Would you expected him to say, I'm leaving and coming home without your daughter?
Gabby's 5'3", maybe 110 pounds. You think it's okay to leave a young 22-year-old person in the middle of nowhere? Whatever the problem is, or whatever the scenario is, you know, I teach my son and my youngest son and Gabby to stand up for your mistakes. All right, if you do something wrong, you apologize and you take what's coming, because that's what decent people do.
What was your reaction when you heard he was refusing to speak to the police?
I screamed. My wife couldn't even console me. Like, I thought the worst. That's my baby. When was the last time you saw my daughter? Tell me that, because that would be our starting point. Instead, he gave me the number to his attorney. That's not like someone who loves you. If you love this person and she's your fiance, then you should turn around and, I don't know, lead the darn charge. But he's sitting there behind his mom like he's 4 years old. If she's hurt or worse, I hope they get what's coming. And that includes his folks. Because I'll tell you, right now they are just as complicit in my book.
Do you believe Brian has hurt your daughter?
Yeah, in my gut, I believe something bad happened.
Well, I have spoken with Gabby's father, Joe, since his daughter was found. Obviously, he's heartbroken. He and I have spoken professionally. We've also spoken just dad to dad. He says he really wants to focus on celebrating Gabby's life, not mourning her loss. And he wants everyone to know that he is so touched and moved by the outpouring of people from all over the world who came forward to support the search for Gabby. And he wants me to thank them as he waits to bring his daughter home. And today, as Gabby's family waits for answers about what happened to their beloved daughter, we're going to be analyzing the voices, the body language, looking for any hidden clues in videos of her final weeks, final days alive. I'm joined first by my good friend, Nancy Grace, host of Crime Stories with Nancy Grace on Fox Nation. She has been reporting on this story and has the latest news. Nancy, it's so good to see you again.
Dr. Phil, I only wish I could be with you in person, but I've been completely consumed covering this story. The very latest is this. You know, we heard that Brian Laundrie went out hiking in the Carlton Reserve. That's near Sarasota. Long story short, I've been in that area, and this is the rainy season. Let's just start with this, Dr. Phil. Typically, there is a lot of swamp, a lot of water, a lot of creeks in that Carlton Reserve. But in the rainy season, about 90% of the trails are covered in water. You want to tell me that he went out there hiking, and when he did not come home on day one, which was Tuesday, his parents weren't concerned? I got another question to throw to you. He's driving a Mustang. There is a ring of press around the Laundrie home. How did Brian Laundrie get out of that home in a Mustang and drive to Carlton Reserve? And nobody saw a thing. The search for him in Carlton Reserve has been called off. And in the last hours, FBI has sworn the Laundrie home. One of the FBI's said, get back, this is a crime scene. The parents were bundled out into a waiting, fed van, and about 15 FBI swarmed the home, bringing out evidence. Got another curveball, Dr. Phil, before I lose my thought. Has anybody seen him since September 1? Has he even been in the home? Because the sister went on national TV and said she hasn't been allowed to talk to him. Has the parents protected him from the police? They haven't talked to him. Has anybody actually seen him? Or has he been on the run after whatever happened with Gabby since September 1?
It boggles my mind that knowing that she's missing, knowing that Nicole Schmidt reported her missing, and he comes home supposedly in her van, not his van, her van, that they're not watching that house, and if he was there, he's able to just walk out the door and disappear. The prime suspect in a missing person, the individual that last saw her, as far as anybody knows, and just walks off and nobody's paying any attention to it. I know that's a small police department down there, but come on. Somebody needs to be watching where this kid's going.
It's not just the Northport police who are doing a valiant job, and everybody's been complaining, why wasn't he already arrested? Yeah, sure, right. Why wasn't he already dragged in for questioning? That's a great question to look at later, but right now, I want to focus on finding him. It's very difficult for me to believe he left that home in a Mustang, go to a reserve with nothing but a backpack, and his parents wait till Friday to call police. Now, one more thing. They had tracker dogs out there, Dr. Phil. They would have smelled his scent around that car. Remember in the Lacey Peterson case? One of the dogs followed the car all the way to San Francisco Bay, we were told. So they would have smelled his scent around where the Mustang had been parked. But we never heard anything about a hit. Was he ever even in the Mustang?
No,
I'd be willing to bet money, if I were a betting woman, which I'm not, that the parents have helped him abscond.
We got to take a quick break. Stay with us, Nancy. Coming up, Gabby's best friend claims Brian was a jealous and controlling boyfriend. We'll hear from her next. Plus, an FBI defense tactics expert instructor weighs in. Steve, do you think this was intentional, or do you think it was an accident?
I believe that this was intentional.
Why?
On behalf of the FBI personnel and our partners, I would like to extend sincere and heartfelt condolences to Gabby's family. Joe and Tara Petito, and Jim and Nicole Schmidt. As every parent can imagine, this is an incredibly difficult time for the family and friends. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. We ask that you all respect the privacy as they mourn the loss of their daughter.
Well, 22-year-old van life vlogger Gabby Petito was last seen on August 24th, and her body was discovered on Sunday afternoon at Bridger Teton National Forest. Now, after returning from their cross-country van trip without Gabby, her fiance and high school sweetheart, Brian Laundrie, refused to speak to both her family and the police. It does not mean he's guilty. We can't say that. We haven't talked to him. He hasn't been questioned. He hasn't been charged. So we need to say that. I'm back with Nancy Grace, who joins us virtually, as well as former law enforcement officer and FBI defense tactic instructor, Steve Cardian. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you for being here. Why are they not watching him, and what's going on right now?
Given the scope of the case, when I heard that he had absconded, I was very surprised that he wasn't being watched. He's not a criminal. He hasn't been charged with anything. He's exercised his constitutional right not to speak to law enforcement. So they didn't necessarily have an obligation, but they should have had an obligation to keep an eye on him, have eyes on him, because he shouldn't have been able to leave that house.
Nancy, it doesn't make sense that these parents wouldn't have enough conscience to pick up the phone and call her parents and say, we need to talk.
It wouldn't make sense if Gabby had still been alive and they knew it. It would not make sense if they were not trying to cover up something. Best case scenario, Dr. Phil, in my mind, best case scenario is that Brian Laundrie left her there and took off. Now, do I believe that's what happened? No, that is not what I believe happened. I think that the discovery of the body launched an entire scenario where now the home has been treated as a crime scene and they're trying to figure out, where's Brian Laundrie? I believe he came home and divulged to his parents what happened to Gabby. And that is why they couldn't call her family. What were they going to say? Lie? What could they say? They couldn't say anything or it would hurt their son. That's my speculation about what happened. And another thing I found out, at first we heard rumors that she had been buried, which indicates to me she was killed. Now I've gotten information that drones were flying overhead and they spotted what they thought was Gabby's remains in a grove of trees. So she wasn't buried. That's the latest we're getting. She didn't fall off a cliff by accident. She didn't die of natural causes, we don't think, but she was under the cover of trees. Now, that weighs in because it helps us figure out what happened to Gabby. But that's why they didn't call the parents, because there was no good news.
Well, Steve, do you think this was intentional, or do you think it was an accident?
We won't know until we find out what the autopsy reveals, but I believe that this was intentional.
Why?
Because they spent such a lengthy period of time together in very, very close and confined quarters. People, no matter how good of a relationship they have, that doesn't work out so well, even amongst people that know themselves real good. It appears that she was maybe agitated him, and in the videos that I've seen, he actually kind of remained calm. I believe if in fact there was something that happened to her, that it was a rage move. When a man wants to control a woman, he's gonna hit her or he's gonna choke her. And a rage move would be to choke someone.
Yeah.
Or lock her out of the car. Hello, what a power play. Everybody think back, August 12th, Moab. Remember Moonflower Co-op? Remember that? She was manic. I looked at her, she didn't look manic to me. She was upset because she got locked out of her car with all of her stuff in there. Power play on his part. She was trying to crawl in the window. I don't know that she did anything to get him upset. If I were her, I'd be upset. Why is this her fault? Well, he was all calm and smiling and chatting up the cops. She's crying. Can't quit crying.
Well, I've picked up a pattern about that I want to talk about. And coming up, a TikTok user says she picked up Brian Laundrie when he was hitchhiking in Wyoming. She claims he was all alone, but acting very strangely. Could Gabby have already been dead during this alleged encounter? That's next. Now, Gabby's close friend made some extremely troubling allegations.
It seemed like there was more and more arguments.
Do you remember any one particular incident?
Yeah.
If she's hurt or worse, I hope they get what's coming. And that includes his folks. Because I'll tell you, right now they are just as complicit in my book. I'm sorry. I understand protecting your kid and all that other stuff. But right now, in my opinion, you're a coward.
19 days pass from when Gabby Petito was reported missing to when investigators discovered her body. That entire time, her fiance, Brian Laundrie, refused to speak to her parents or law enforcement about what may have happened to her. Now, that doesn't mean he did anything wrong, but it does stand to reason that he had information no one else had. Gabby's father said because of Brian's silence, he had no idea to where even begin looking for his missing daughter. Watch this, and then I'm going to have criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh, who also joins us now, weigh in.
We called Brian, we called the mom, we called the dad, we called the sister, we called every number we could find. And we got no phone calls were picked up, no text messages were returned.
So mom, dad, sister, Brian, nobody took your calls?
No one. I just print out a map, draw a circle, and fill it into an airplane and throw it in the front yard. I don't care. You don't have to say a thing. Just tell me where to start. We'll start.
Well, criminal defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh joins us now. And look, it's real easy to jump to conclusions because his behavior's not helping him.
No. Well, his behavior is not helping us, yes, but it's helping him. His behavior is selfish, it's self-centered, and it's designed exclusively to protect him. He's doing what our Constitution allows him to do. And with I see her rolling her eyes, but with utmost respect and love for my dear friend Nancy Grace, I do want to challenge her with one thing. She made it seem that law enforcement were not doing their job by grabbing him when they did see him and bringing him into a station. Nancy, let me finish for the first time ever. The truth of the matter is, the reason why law enforcement did not do that, which we all would have liked, the court of public opinion would have liked that, they didn't do it because we don't live in a third world country. They weren't allowed to do it. The Constitution protected him. He told through his lawyers that I'm not speaking with you.
They didn't have cause to arrest him, but they certainly had the ability and the common sense to keep an eye on him so he didn't just disappear.
Different story.
Exactly.
You're right. Why they didn't, I don't know.
Okay, now Gabby's close friend, Rose Davis, did an exclusive interview with DailyMail.com where she made some extremely troubling allegations. She claimed Brian had a history of being jealous and controlling. Let's hear what she said.
On the outside, he's very charismatic, so it seems very loving, and of course, like any relationship, there was arguments, and she'd come stay at my house when there was arguments just to like get away.
Do you remember any one particular incident?
Yeah, well, we were supposed to go line dancing, and her drive is about 30 minutes to me, and halfway there, she realized her ID was missing. And so it caused a really big argument because Brian just didn't want her to go out, and it was a jealousy issue, and it caused a huge argument between them, and she came over and cried. I do believe that their relationship, as they kept going on, was getting a little, problematic. I mean, just seemed like there was more and more arguments, and everything she did, I feel like, he thought was wrong. And even as she said in the body cam, he didn't even support her with her blog.
So I've been building my website, so I've just been really stressed and I didn't really believe that I could do any of it.
That in itself, made me feel like it just continued to get worse.
I want to say, I looked at some of that footage with Joe Petito when I interviewed him right before the body was found, and he actually said that he hadn't looked at some of the body cam footage because he said, I just can't watch my daughter crying, certainly on the side of the road. So it was painful for him to look at, but he agreed to look at it with me. And in the police report filed, the officer stated, quote, "The male tried to create distance by telling Gabby to go take a walk to calm down. She didn't want to be separated from the male and began slapping him." And the whole idea was what Nancy had mentioned earlier, like she didn't want to be left on the side of the road. She didn't want to be excluded from the van. And you know, I looked at this whole pattern and I found 7 examples of why she may have reason to be concerned about being left. He left the engagement, which broke up right before they went on this grand tour of the United States. The engagement broke up. He left her out of the van and wouldn't let her in. He left her alone to stay in the van at night when he went to a motel when the cops separated them. He left her alone when he flew home to deal with storage buildings for 5 days. He left her when he came home without her to begin with. He left her family hanging, worrying, wondering what happened. He left his home and went missing. This guy tends to leave.
If this ever goes to court, Phil, I watched an hour and 17 minutes of that body cam footage.
As did I.
And I believe I let the jury see that entire hour of 17 minutes because he comes across charming, controlling. This guy comes across smooth.
Well, he does part of the way, and then things begin to take a little bit of a different turn. Coming up, this was one of the very last videos taken of Gabby alive. What clues could be hidden in this tape? You may notice him wringing his hands and rocking.
He's wringing his hands, and his elbows are against his chest. He's not just under stress, he's afraid.
Change your outlook, change your life.
You really get at the heart of this
with Professor of Behavioral Economics, Dan Ariely.
We are surrounded by other entities that control the environment and therefore change our decisions.
If you don't want to eat too much, set your environment up to support you when you don't feel like doing it.
Fill in the blanks.
You go to the supermarket, and guess what? They control the environment. They decide what's at eye level.
Available on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
You want to tell me about hitting that curb?
Hitting the curb was her grabbing the wheel.
She grabbed the wheel?
Yeah. She said, I can't believe you're getting pulled over, and then she grabbed the wheel.
What about the speed? Did she take over the pedal on you?
If I was going fast, I'm sorry. No, it's probably just the moment of, like, I'm still shaking now. The adrenaline, seeing the lights flashing up, and then her grabbing the wheel. So if I sped up, I'm sorry about that. Or if I was speeding beforehand, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it took quite a bit to catch up to you. So, yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
On August 12th, Moab City Police Department responded to a call about a possible domestic violence situation between Gabby and her fiancé, Brian. Now, I want to introduce body language expert and analyst Scott Rouse. Now, he is an author and holds multiple certificates in advanced interrogation training and has been trained alongside the FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Military Intelligence, and Department of Defense. He's the guy. He's also a member of the Behavior Panel, 4 of the world's top body language and behavior experts who analyze body language and human behavior in videos of public interest. Scott, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You looked at this, and we can look at some of the video, but overall, how would you characterize Brian's conduct in the early interactions with law enforcement?
In the first part, and especially in the first video, we're looking at everything you would see in a normal traffic stop that's a non-felony traffic stop. He's going to be talking quickly. He's going to be very apologetic. He's going to be saying, I'm sorry a lot. These are all normal behaviors.
Well, let's take a look at Brian's body language as he is questioned outside the van. And you may notice him wringing his hands and rocking. So let's take a look at this video.
All right.
Tell me what's going on.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her. So, like, I locked the car and I walked away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything. So I give her time. And we really had a nice morning, if anything, but she just got worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going because we want to go like arches before this other time.
Okay. What about the speed? Did she take over the?
No,
take over the pedal on you?
If I was going fast, I'm sorry. No, it's probably just the the moment of, like, I'm still shaking now. The adrenaline, seeing the lights flashing up, and then her gripping the wheel. So if I sped up, I'm sorry about that. Or if I was speeding beforehand, I'm sorry about that.
It took quite a bit to catch up to you. So,
yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, now tell me what you're seeing here. You're saying his hand movements, there's fluidity, he's being open and...
He's being fairly open. The illustrators are the way your brain emphasizes specific words or phrases, like I did just then, specific words or phrases. His are all on the money. They're all happening when they should. If they were to happen when they should, like that, then something's up. He's just nervous at this point, in this part of it, because everything, it seems, it's quick and fast, and he's breathing heavily because he's nervous. His fight or flight is engaged. Everything is as it should be for this situation.
Okay, now you say things take a change. When we come back, we are going to take a closer look at Brian's behavior in front of the police. It was very telling, and not in the way you might think. You say things take a change.
Right here, this is called the fig leaf. He hasn't done this up to this point.
Police released an hour-long body cam video that shows Gabby and Brian being pulled over and questioned by officers in Moab, Utah. Let's approach the screen here and let's look at this fourth one.
All right.
Let's just start playing this and then we can stop it when we need to.
What was the disagreement about?
Right here.
Okay, what are we
This is the first time we've seen this up to this point. This is called the fig leaf, where you guard the groin area. People do that when they're insecure, when they're not sure what's going on, they're afraid, they're nervous. The first time doing something, being on TV or something, you'll see them, it'll go down here like this. He hasn't done this up to this point. They've gotten close to there. And at the same time, we see what are called adapters. He's wringing his hands. Now, when you wring your hands like that, it's one thing, earlier he was just touching his hands. Now he's starting to wring them. When you do this, it's called an adapter. It's a pacifying behavior. So he's getting rid of that built-up stress or tension from the situation.
Okay, now he's separated from her right now.
Right.
She's back in the car where they've put her. And, you know, I noticed early when they were talking to him, I never heard him say, look, guys, this was no big deal. Come on, we were just kind of fussing for a minute. We're fine. We're good. I have no problem. He never says, look, we're good. We're fine. He lets this roll on because they're ramping up on her. That bothered me. Did that bother you, that he wasn't coming to her defense?
Yes, it's perception management. He's trying to make the whole thing seem not as, when he talks about her pushing him, she talks about him, she hit him with the phone, but he says the phone got him. He doesn't say she hit me at any time. He talks about how he shoved her. He's separating himself from this, no telling what he thought may happen if they both got in trouble, because if he says, she's hitting me, this is bad, not any good, then you've got a problem there. They're going to haul her off at that point.
Well, he's sure not coming to her defense, but let's see what...
It was just, I'm dirty and I can't change
This is him.
This
is him wringing his hands here.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's holding down near the groin. And these illustrators we saw up here earlier that was so big are now down here and they're really tight. And his elbows are against his chest. These are the things that let you know, they indicate that he's not just under stress, he's afraid at this point. See, his elbows are close like this, more of this, those short little shoulder pops. All this tells you he's being guarded. He's talking about the problems they had at this point. The problems she had with him. He was dirty. He was bringing sand into the van, those types of things. And as he talks about the things she doesn't like and the problems with their relationship, that's when things start close. That's when he starts closing down. We see completely different body language here.
Yeah, because before he was much more open.
Open, looking around. His cadence and his voice has slowed down a lot. Before it was a little bit quicker. His voice is lower.
Okay, now here he is at the end. He's back now down here again.
Yes, we have not seen that up to this point.
Okay, and what's that tell you?
That he's afraid of what's going to happen. He's trying to guard what he's talking about. He's talking about their anger. He's controlling his anger at this point. These are all little cues and tells that let you know he's controlling things, not just what he thinks she might be, but he's controlling his anger. He's controlling himself. And that's what we see when he's doing this, his arms close, because he's afraid he's going to go a little bit further and start talking.
Okay, and we saw that, when you go back, we saw that right here. and then we saw it back here.
Yes.
And then we saw it back here.
Yes.
In the beginning. So he hits that 1, 2, 3, 4 times throughout here.
Right. Every time you see him talking about their problems, that's when he starts closing down. Being a controlling person was what I would grab from that.
Okay. All right. Coming up, a witness comes forward. Could a sighting of Gabby's van hold the key to her final moments? And what about the couple who picked up Brian hitchhiking without Gabby? That's next.
On August 27th, we got camera footage going through the Grand Tetons Park.
This is at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area.
And we came across a white van that had Florida plates.
The van looked like it was pretty much kind of abandoned. We're approaching it up here on the left-hand side. This is most definitely Gabby Petito's Ford Transit van, but here it is on the left.
And I slowed it down so you can possibly see it a little bit better.
Well, Gabby Petito's body was discovered on Sunday in Teton County, Wyoming. Police previously identified her fiancé and high school sweetheart, Brian Laundrie, as a person of interest in her disappearance. As this case swept across social media, one young woman named Miranda Baker posted on her TikTok that she and her boyfriend actually picked up Brian on August 29th when he was hitchhiking in Wyoming alone.
On August 29th, my boyfriend and I picked up Brian at Grand Teton National Park. He offered to pay us like $200 to give him a ride, like 10 miles. He did say he had a fiance and that she was back at their van. He then told us he's been camping for multiple days without his fiance. He didn't look dirty, he didn't smell dirty. Then he freaked out. He's like, nope, I need to get out right now. So we pulled over and then he's like, okay, I'm just gonna go find someone else to, hitchhike.
Nancy, what do you make of that? He's picked up, he offers him $200 to go 10 miles, then he wants to get out. He says he's been camping numerous days, but he's clean. They say he looks like he's showered. What's he camping with, and why is he not with his fiancée?
Everything that Brian Laundrie told the TikTok girl, as I call her, Miranda Baker, is a lie. I believe her. I'll tell you why I believe her. I have put, I don't even know how many thousands of witnesses on the stand over many, many years. Her story was rich in detail. She had her dates down, her times down. She looked right in the camera. She didn't have to think about, oh, what am I going to say next? No deviation, rapid blinking of the eye. I mean, your language, your nonverbal expert could see all that, I'm sure, plus so much more. She's telling the truth. Now, why is he out on a tarp on the Snake River and he's smelling sweet in that car? Because he's been somewhere else. I think at that point, Gabby's already dead.
What do you make of this?
Certainly, I believe her wholeheartedly as well. Why he left, who knows? Was he fleeing? Was he going to try and get rid of some evidentiary material? There was obviously a reason. Or had he gone somewhere and now he was trying to get to another destination?
Yeah. Did you believe the TikToker as you looked at her? She seemed to me to be very authentic.
As she speaks, she's doing what's called loping. As she talks, it's just loping right along, not stopping, thinking. And like Nancy was saying, she just, not only does she look that way because she is that way, she's showing you all the cues that say yes. She's telling a real story there.
Now, I've got a question for Mark that I think is a legitimate but difficult question that I want to ask right after the break. And we want to talk about why police are defending their approach on how they handled Brian Laundrie. But I'm really interested in what Mark has to say about what I want to ask him when we come back. Mark, as a highly experienced defense lawyer, you mentioned before that he certainly has a right to not speak, and certainly is probably an argument can be made that it's in his best interest. But Having spent a lot of my career on the defense side of the docket, I think about what's going to ultimately play out in front of a jury.
Correct.
And if, in fact, something bad has taken place that he's involved in, can he not buy an awful lot of goodwill if he does the humane thing, if he's transparent here? Again, we don't know that he did anything wrong. He hasn't even been charged. But wouldn't he curry an awful lot of favor if he stepped up and did the right thing?
Yes, which is what I tell my clients, if he's got something to say. And that's why I do not believe that anything that could flow from his lips at this moment or before he went missing could have assisted him. Understand his failure to say anything to law enforcement or to the world can never be used against him in a court of law. It's right there in the Fifth Amendment. So there's no downside in saying nothing. And his lawyers, again, assuming they're doing their job, will say, keep quiet. The fish who kept his mouth shut never got caught. Keep your mouth shut, you murdering guy. And then we'll see what the evidence is.
Yeah.
I left out that murdering part. I wouldn't say
Right.
that to him. Yeah.
Well, Gabby's father, Joe, tweeted this image and caption as a tribute to his beautiful daughter, Gabby. It says, Gabby Petito, she touched the world. I would like to thank my guests today, Nancy Grace, Steve Cardian, Mark Eiglarsh, Scott Rouse. We are praying for Gabby's family. Please know that we are continuing to work and support them every step of the way. For more information about today's episode, log on to drphil.com. We'll be discussing this on all the social media platforms because I know so many of you have questions. We'll answer everything we can in the information that we have from the family. We'll see you next time. So long. Thanks a lot, guys.
Today on Dr. Phil.
"19 students and 2 dedicated teachers. Today we're here doing yet another show on a senseless mass shooting in America. This one at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. 2 teachers and 19 children are dead. They left for school in the morning and are never coming home. In the second most deadly school shooting since Sandy Hook. When this happened at Newtown 10 years ago, we called it unthinkable. Now this cold reality has happened again. 10 years ago, I spoke to devastated parents whose children were injured, traumatized, and murdered for absolutely no reason. Children who went to school with their whole lives ahead of them, and then were just dead. We spoke about the change that needed to happen, changes in laws, changes in mental health checks and support, changes in how to spot and handle warning signs. And in these past 10 years, I've continued to speak to victims, parents, and advocates each time this has happened. Where does it happen? We never know. Churches, supermarkets, schools. When is enough enough? Today, I'm dedicating this show to speaking about how to stop this. And the question is it possible? Is it possible to stop this? I believe there are things we can do. And I certainly believe it is past time that we do it. And I know many, if not all Americans, share with me that belief that we do what we can, that we do what we have to keep this from happening repeatedly over and over again. I think you're going to be shocked at just how frequently this is happening just on school campuses. We're going to talk about that today. But first, let's take a look at what happened in Uvalde and the lives lost.
We come on the air tonight after another mass shooting in America.
A South Texas town brought to its knees after a teen gunman opens fire inside an elementary school.
According to police, just after recess is when it happened. Peach slices, ham sandwiches waiting on the school lunch menu. And that's when 18-year-old Salvador Ramos walked into Robb Elementary School. He was armed with an AR-15 style rifle, also had high-capacity magazines with him, according to police. Weapons, by the way, that he bought legally this very month on his 18th birthday.
The day of the shooting, Ramos had a fight with his grandmother over failing to graduate. She was shot in the face and is in critical condition. Ramos fled the home in his grandparents' pickup truck, crashing into this gully. Surveillance video shows him running into the school seconds later. The massacre was about to begin.
Authorities tonight confirming that the gunman was in the elementary school for an hour or more before he was shot and killed.
The anguished cries of desperate parents after the massacre at Robb Elementary. Pleading with police to rescue their children. An elite Border Patrol team moving behind a shield entered the classroom and killed the suspect.
Behind desks and chairs. Well, we were scared and the teacher started telling us we can pray. And I was happy I didn't get shot.
For 40 minutes, his mother had no idea if he was alive.
This heart-wrenching photo shows 11 of the 19 children who died.
We'll leave it with this. If America can't universally agree that an 18-year-old shouldn't be able to buy 2 assault rifles and 375 rounds of ammo in 3 days, with no questions asked, then what the hell can we agree on?
Now, I'm sure you have been saturated with information about what happened in Uvalde, Texas. And the thing that I think we all need to realize is that this doesn't just happen to someone else. This doesn't just happen in another town. This doesn't just happen to some community we read about. It can happen anywhere. And in this town, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos did the unthinkable. And like is the case in so many of these situations, he telegraphed what he was going to do. There were Instagram posts with him with firearms, deadly firearms, one being an AR-15. He sent some private posts. He said, "I'm going to shoot my grandmother." His second post, "I shot my grandmother." His third post, within 15 minutes of the first, "I'm going to shoot an elementary school." 15 minutes later, en route, he crashes his truck in a concrete ditch near Robb Elementary School. We've heard what AR-15s are. You can do a tremendous amount of damage when you can put out that much firepower. Now, I don't care where you stand on the Second Amendment. Ask the common sense question: what does an 18-year-old boy need with that kind of a weapon? What does any civilian need with that kind of a weapon? And if a child, an 18-year-old boy, can get his hands on that, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old can get their hands on that, do they have the maturity to manage it? You're looking right now at the ammunition that this particular weapon put out. This is a serious round of ammunition that will do tremendous damage to whatever it hits. Now, again, I'm not going to go back over all of these tragic details with you, but this young man enters the back door and makes his way down a series of short hallways before he enters a classroom, where he opens fire with this rapid fire weapon, is what we now believe, and kills 19 students and 2 teachers. How long did it take before someone responded? That's in controversy right now. Parents are frustrated, saying police officers did not respond fast enough. Parents were talking about charging the school themselves, trying to get something done because they knew that their children were in there. It's reported that a Border Patrol officer ultimately shot and killed Ramos. It's also been reported that he legally purchased 2 AR platform rifles on 2 separate dates in May, reportedly around $3,000. Where did he get that money? Did somebody buy these for him? Why was he in possession of these weapons? Most people greatly underestimated how much of a problem this is in America today. Now, I'm not talking about mass shootings. I'm just talking about school shootings right now. And I want to tell you that the trend is getting worse. In 2021, there was an all-time high number of school shootings. Now, it depends on how you define a school shooting. And I want to tell you that the Center for Homeland Defense and Security K through 12 school shooting database defines it this way. They define a school shooting as any incident where a firearm was brandished or fired at a school. Doesn't mean somebody was killed, but a gun showed up at a school and was brandished. And from January 1st through December 5th, the database reported 222 incidences. Now, if you divide that up by the number of average weeks in a school year, which is, we'll pick 36, that's 6.16 incidences per week. Now, if your jaw's not on the floor, I would be surprised. This is clearly headed in the wrong direction. What's it going to take for us to wake up and say we have to do something? More than 311,000 students have experienced gun violence since Columbine occurred. That's according to the Washington Post. This is out of control.
Jesse Rodriguez's 10-year-old daughter Annabelle was one of the 21 killed.
They let our baby get slaughtered, sacrificed, while their ass is sitting behind a wall.
19 students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School should have been starting the first day of their summer break today. Instead, their families are making funeral plans.
We now return to Dr. Phil.
On the brink of summer vacation, lives in the small town of Uvalde, Texas have changed forever. This is the deadliest school shooting since the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida in 2018.
My older son was at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas that day.
The fire alarm was pulled, and I had just wandered into a supply closet with a janitor and maybe a couple of peers.
I called my son, Ryan, and he said, "Dad, where's Alex?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Dad, don't worry, it's gonna be okay." I said, "Ryan, I don't think it's gonna be okay." Alex wasn't at the hospital. The reason he wasn't at any of the hospitals is because he was still at that school, shot and bleeding and dying.
On Valentine's Day in 2018, a lone gunman, a former student, walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and opened fire, killing 17 people and wounding 17 others. It happened on the eve of the 19th anniversary of Columbine, one of the deadliest school shootings in history, where 12 students and 1 teacher were killed by 2 gunmen. When that happened, we actually brought some of the Columbine survivors to talk to some of those who survived Parkland. And not surprisingly, the memories of that day, those minutes almost 2 decades ago, were just as fresh as all of those years ago. When these school shootings happen now, it's been 19 years, what effect, if any, does this have on the 2 of you?
It affects me terribly. I'm now a mother of 2, and I send them into this environment that I feel isn't safe. It's a struggle every day to send them off to school.
Especially when another shooting happens, it brings it all back. It's
re-victimizing all over again. You relate to the sounds, the emotions. You're square one again. It
You're
like
right back
resets
there.
my progress.
You know, it was tragically foreboding to have these former Columbine students talk to the Florida students. You know, Katie related that she had struggled with alcohol and drugs during this time, and that it was self-medication. And she said, that's something that I overcame on my own, and once I had my son, I couldn't handle my own grief and my own struggles, let alone try to deal with raising a small human being. I asked her about guilt. You said you felt a lot of guilt since then. Tell me why.
Survivor's guilt is the sort of thing I didn't anticipate, where you don't feel worthy. It's like, why did I make it? What was my purpose? Why was it them and not me?
And she talked about the fact that she ran past her best friend who survived, but she said, I ran right past her. And she said, when it came down to it, the instinct was to save myself, and I was raised to help other people. But when you get down to it, that's not what was happening. So I had tremendous survivor's guilt for years, including a coach that she looked up to a lot who died saving her life and that of many others. Now, why am I pointing this out now? And it was so moving to see these survivors separated by 20 years is, you know, in America, we tend to read these headlines and we genuinely care about these people. We genuinely want to see it stopped. We genuinely want to see it changed. But as time goes on and we're absorbed into our own lives, it gets pushed off center stage. But this doesn't end when the cameras go away. It doesn't end when the headlines change. These Columbine survivors, now 20 plus years later, are still suffering from what happened that day. They have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and these are the ones that survived. Think about the families who sent their children to school that morning and they didn't come back home alive. Think about what they have to deal with every time they turn on the television. They open up their computer and they see that nothing has changed. In fact, it's getting worse. They think, well, you know, if my child died and it was a catalyst for change, then at least there's some meaning to the loss. But was there meaning to the loss? If it's gotten worse, if it's doubled, if it's gone up 98% since 2017, then you say, I lost my loved one, or I went through this and survived, and nothing has changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. They died in vain. Their life meant nothing. My 20 years of suffering meant nothing. What does it take to get people's attention? What does it take for us to say we have to do something different? We have to figure out what's causing this to happen.
I'm a med aid, so when I arrived on the scene, they still had kids inside. They started bringing the kids out, and I was aiding assistants. One little girl was just covered in blood, head to toe.
We now return to Dr. Phil.
She was hysterical, saying that they shot her best friend, that they killed her best friend and she's not breathing, and that she was trying to call the cops. And I asked the little girl the name, and she told me, she said Amory. Yes, I got confirmation from 2 of the students in her classroom that she was just trying to call the authorities. And I guess he just shot her. How do you look at this girl and shoot her? Oh, my baby, how do you shoot my baby? I'm sorry.
What does it take to get people's attention? What does it take for us to say we have to do something different? What's causing this to happen? Threats, just threats in the first month of the school year have gone up. September of 21, they identified 151 threats compared to a 3-year average of 29. What is going on? This has to be analyzed. It has to be thought about. And actual shootings doubled from the previous year at 55, up from 24. We need to not be thinking about, hey, how can we keep doing the same thing? We need to be thinking about how can we do something different. So the question is always, well, all right, let's identify the profile. Who's doing this shooting? Sadly, I can tell you there is no profile, and we don't have the psychological tools to identify who's going to be a shooter. But there are some commonalities, there are some indicators, and I'm going to share with you what some of those are. These are often current or former students of the school they go to shoot up. It's not always the case, and they are often in some type of mental, emotional, or social crisis. And being bullied was common. Now, do they go back and shoot the bully? Occasionally, but typically that's not the case. Shooters go and aggress not against their transgressors, but against surrogates. They go shoot against somebody that's just a stand-in. They just go shoot somebody that is available, somebody that they aren't threatened by. These are people that have experienced observable, now I want to emphasize observable, mental health symptoms in 3 main categories: psychological, behavioral, and neurological. I'm emphasizing observable because people notice that they're behaving unusually. About half of them have received 1 or more mental health services, so they've come to the attention of mental health providers, so they're not completely in the dark and about these people. They are on somebody's radar. Most typically, it's depression or suicidal ideation. Some have anxiety. A much smaller percentage than you would think present with anger. They're depressed. They've been shunned by society. They've been through some type of rejection experience. And our number one need is acceptance. Our number one fear is rejection. And they've had some trauma in that regard. And they very frequently have negative home life factors such as divorce, drug use, someone in the family, a mother or father, have criminal charges, and domestic violence is common. So they exhibit these concerning behaviors, and that contradicts the myth that, oh, it's the nicest guy, it's the last person I would have ever thought of. That's not true. And here's a very troubling element. They're often the product of the contagion effect. Now, what do I mean by that? They're inspired by other school shooters. I say that's particularly troubling because when you see what has happened in Uvalde, that predicts that it's very likely that there's going to be a repeat of this in the near future. Someone out there that is really desperate, really tragic, is going to see what has happened here, and they're going to become obsessed with it, and they're going to react to it. Maybe in a week, maybe in a month, who knows? And one of the most confounding things about this is they often tell others what they're going to do before they do it. Last year, we covered another shocking school shooting that happened just days after Thanksgiving. On November 28, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumley walked into Oxford High School in a Detroit suburb and shot and killed 4 students. Some students actually stayed home because they said they knew what was going to happen and they didn't feel safe going to school. Now, this crime not only stood out at the time as being the deadliest school shooting since Parkland, but for being the first where a shooter's parents have been charged with crimes linked to the shooting.
They basically gave him a license and permission to kill. Did they know the gun was in the backpack? Did they know the plan, what he was going to carry out? Why not bring him home if there's trouble?
Isn't their job to know where the gun is? If the gun is missing from home and their child is being called in at school and he's drawing pictures of bullets and blood, and they say, "Where's our gun?" And he was shooting it the day before. Isn't it endemic upon a parent to say, "Wait a minute, this isn't a coincidence"? And we also heard about what happened from Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard. Sheriff, when you find out about this in this case and in most cases, you intervene once something happens, right?
The school district officials did interview the subject the day before and the day of the tragedy, and we were never brought into those meetings, and that would have triggered the protocols that we have in place, and that is that if there's concerning behavior, the first thing we do is determine if there's a threat immediately. I'm sad to say, we sit here today, we've had more threats today. If you make a threat, even if it's not real, if you think it's a joke, it's not. If you have no intention of carrying out a threat, it's still a crime.
We now return to Dr. Phil.
The shooter charged through the doors of Uvalde's Robb Elementary School, opening fire just after 11:30. Armed law enforcement says with an AR-15 assault rifle, high-capacity magazines, and a handgun.
And we have learned that the gunman illegally purchased 2 assault rifles and almost 400 rounds of ammunition earlier this month for his 18th birthday.
Another very powerful weapon. And by the way, these weapons are very expensive. I think in this case, there were reports that the gun cost close to $1,800. And you have to ask yourself, where does this kid get money for an $1,800 assault rifle? And when you talk to the family, the grandfather says he knew nothing about it.
Could you give us any insight into his
Not
state
really.
of mind? When's the last time you spoke to him?
I speak to him daily.
You know he had guns in the house?
No, I didn't know. I get up at 5 o'clock, leave, come back.
He didn't know that the child had this. And look, I'm sorry, but if you have a child that's building up an arsenal, it's your job to know. You need to know what your child is spending money on and where they're getting that kind of money. There were 2 rifles apparently bought in the Uvalde shooting. And we don't want to focus on just statistics and firearms and weapons and forget what's on the other end of that rifle. What's on the other end of this tragedy? It may just seem like, firearms and guns and violence, but let's not forget the humanity. Some of the children, and we are talking children here, 9, 10-year-old children in Uvalde. One of them speaking to a local news outlet, KENS5, in Texas, said, "When I heard the shooting through the door, I told my friend to hide under something so he won't find us." He said, and I quote, "I was hiding hard, and I was telling my friend not to talk because he's going to hear us." The boy shared heartbreaking details about what happened in that room. He said, and I quote, "When the cops came, the cop said, 'Yell if you need help.' And one of the persons in my class said, 'Help!' The guy overheard and he came and shot her," the boy said. The cop barged into that classroom and the guy shot at the cop and the cop started shooting. He said that once the shooting stopped, he came out from under the table. "I got out with my friend. I knew it was police because I saw the armor and the shield." It's a 10-year-old child. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Now, the big question that you have to be asking yourself right now is, if what we've been talking about is true, and it is, You can study this for years, as I have, and you're going to find that these people are likely to tell somebody what they're going to do. They're actually very likely to be known to the system. So if they tend to have what's called leakage, meaning that they post a manifesto, or they put things on the internet, or they tell people what they're going to do, you think, then how are we not stopping this? How are we not doing this? Well, there are a couple other factors that I haven't talked about yet. And one is, where do they get the guns?
It won't be part of the official death count, but it is part of the toll of this horrific event. Joe Garcia, the husband of teacher Irma Garcia, who was killed Tuesday, he died today of a heart attack. This is him this morning, visiting his wife's memorial here at the elementary school. They were high school sweethearts, and friends say he died of a broken heart.
We now return to Dr. Phil.
Even before the horrors of Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo just 10 days ago, the arrows were pointing in an alarming direction. 61 active shooter incidents in 2021. That's twice as many as in 2017. The shooting incidents took place in 30 states last year, 6 in California, and 5 each in Georgia and Texas. The total number shot, 243, including 103 killed.
Our heart is breaking for these families.
And before today, 14 deaths in or near schools this year, a total that more than doubled this afternoon.
Now, we've talked about a couple instances where the individual apparently purchased the guns. And in Texas, for example, you're not permitted to possess a firearm if you're under 18. Many of these school shooters are under 18. So where are they getting the guns? Research tells us they get these guns at home. They get these guns when they are not properly secured. So you cannot tell me that these families don't know that they have someone in their family having a problem fitting in, coming into conflict with authority. They should be concerned with depression, they should be concerned with suicide, and they should be concerned with having guns readily available to someone with that mindset, even if they are just concerned with the young man shooting himself. But in so many of these instances, we find that they simply walked into another room of the house and picked up a gun that was readily available. Now, what am I saying here? These shootings can be stopped, but it doesn't do any good if it just raises awareness and everyone is heartbroken and sends their prayers. Please do that. But along with doing that, we need to write to our congressmen, to our senators, state and federal, and insist that there needs to be a program for universal threat assessment. There needs to be a protocol where we add a crisis response team. If so many people hear that something like this is going on, why aren't they doing anything about it? They're not doing anything about it because they don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They don't know what to say. They don't want, if there's somebody that they think, oh, this is a dangerous individual, they certainly don't want to irritate that person. They don't want to feel like, hey, I ratted them out, I tattled on them, now they're going to be mad at me, so I'm in danger. We need to have a situation where we can give students an anonymous, protected way to report concerns, to report a post on Instagram, hearing something in the lunchroom where they can report that and someone can reach out to that student and find out, do they need help? And do they fit a profile? Do they have a home life that is tumultuous? Are their guns easily accessible inside the home? Are all of those factors there that make up a volatile situation? Because make no mistake, we have to focus on prevention, not intervention. Why? Because almost half of school shootings are over in the first few minutes. If there's an active shooter, of course you want to call 911. But the truth of the matter is, even if you have an officer on site, that officer is likely to react to the shooting, not stop the shooting. That means we need to prevent it before it happens. If that armed guard is at one end of the hallway and the shooter is at the other end of the hallway with a weapon, a lot of death can be dealt before even a responsible officer can go into action. You can see 44% of attacks are 1 minute or less, another 24% are 1 to 2 minutes. So you've got 68% of attacks are 2 minutes or less. So having a guard on campus, unless they are standing real close to that attacker, they're going to be reacting to what has already happened instead of preventing it from happening. Do I think there should be an officer on campus? Of course there should be someone there, but we need to put at least as much effort in preventing that shooter from ever picking up that weapon, and that means there has to be a system where they are identified by the system, where somebody has a place to go, someone to tell. Colorado has such a program called Safe to Tell. It's a statewide anonymous reporting tool which accepts tips 24/7, and they have had 19,861 tips in the 2018-2019 year. This gives them the opportunity to react before someone picks up a gun and steps on campus. It could be something that we can look at. And if you want to see it, it's at www.safetotell.org. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about, because I've been asked this a lot, is what do you say to your children?
9-year-old Andrea Herrera used to play every day with her stepbrother, Jose Flores.
He would always say, I want to be a cop so I can protect all these other people and all the bad guys.
Now, these toys are all she and their little brother Jaden have left.
What does that make you think about?
It's just sad because the fact that he wanted to be a cop and he didn't have a chance to be it.
We now return to Dr. Phil.
This is Mia Cirillo. She's just 11 years old. The fourth grader is struggling to cope with Tuesday's massacre. Her aunt and godmother Blanca Rivera telling us the nightmare scenario was one she witnessed up close and personal.
Mia got some blood and put it on herself, but she couldn't pretend that she was dead. Grandma said that. She saw her friend full of blood, and she got blood and put it on herself.
Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about, because I've been asked this a lot, is what do you say to your children? In this instance, fortunately, we're coming up to the end of the school year for many school systems, but not everywhere. And whether your child is going to be attending more classes or whether they're not, you've got to think through what to tell your children. And the first thing I want to say to you is, do not assume that your children know about this, because they may not. But if they don't know about this, I'm not sure that I would talk to them about this. And the flip side of that is, well, if I don't, what if one of their friends does? Wouldn't I rather control that conversation before it's visited upon them by their friends who may traumatize them? That is a risk. And you might want to talk to your friends' parents about this and come up with a plan. If you make the decision to talk to your child about this, then you want to do it in an age-appropriate way. And that term gets used a lot but never defined. So let me define that. You want to define that based on their questions to you. Ask them what they know. Listen very carefully to the words that they use and meet them where they are. Don't ask them to meet you where you are. If they say, well, I heard something happened at another school and some children were hurt, that's the level you want to discuss this with them at. If they say, I saw something on the internet or TV where somebody murdered 19 children, then, okay, again, you want to ask questions. Well, what does that mean to you? What do you know about that? Let them tell you what their construct is of murdered or killed or hurt. Let them, don't assume that they understand the meaning of all those words. It doesn't happen very often. There are people that love you and care about you, and we keep a really close eye on everything that's going on. And if you ever see anything that makes you uncomfortable or that worries you in any way, then you tell your teacher and you tell mom and dad. And when this is being wall-to-wall covered, I wouldn't leave my television on and let them see things that they could overinterpret or overreact to. Now, am I suggesting that with young children you downplay this and not emphasize the gravity of it? Yes, I am. I don't think that you want to ask children to deal with adult issues or introduce to them things over which they have no control. Now, for older children, you want to ask them what their questions are. And again, reassure them that you are in close contact, you're keeping an eye on things, and make sure that's true. Don't go running up to the school with your hair on fire, hysterically demanding to know what the security protocols are, but have an intelligent conversation with your school. Are they adhering to proper protocols? Is there proper security? Make sure that people aren't thinking, oh, this would never happen here. But make sure that you have in mind what you're going to say to your children if you're asked this question.
People from across Uvalde and beyond gathered to mourn the lives lost.
As we say goodbye today, we want to honor the 19 innocent young boys and girls and their 2 brave and loving teachers who all lost their lives in this terrible, senseless tragedy. Ellie Garcia.
She was very sweet. She was very happy and very outgoing.
Uzziah Garcia. Neviea Bravo. Maddie Yelena Rodriguez.
She was charismatic, smart, bright, beautiful, happy.
McKenna Lee Elrod. Xavier Lopez. Tess Mata. Annabelle Guadalupe Rodriguez. Rogelio Torres. Alethea Ramirez.
She was just a young girl full of life.
JC Carmela Luevanos. Jayla Nicole Seguero. Jacqueline Cazares.
She loved to do music, loved to be around family, trying to help out anybody she could.
Miranda Mathis. Ileana Cruz Torres. Jose Flores Jr. Alexandria Lexi Ania Rubio. Layla Salazar. Amara Jo Garza.
She was the sweetest little girl who did nothing wrong. She listened to her mom and dad. I just want to know what she did to be a victim.
And they're 2 brave and loving teachers. Eva Morales and Irma Garcia.
সো হ্যালো হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ গাইস, ওয়েলকাম টু আনাদার ব্র্যান্ড নিউ ভিডিও। চলে এসেছি নতুন একটা ভিডিও নিয়ে। সো গাইস, ভেবেছিলাম এডব্লিউ নিয়ে একটা শর্ট রেঞ্জের গান নেব, বাট তা কয়েনে কুলালো না। দুঃখের বিষয় গাইস, এডব্লিউ দিয়ে যদি কোনো মতে কাউকে নাক করতে পারি তো তা থেকে একটা শর্ট রেঞ্জের গান নিয়ে নেবো গাইস। লেটস সি। ওকে গাইস, এডব্লিউ নিয়ে উপরে চলে যাওয়া যাক। ওকে গাইস, দেখা যাক এই ড্রপের মধ্যে থেকে কোনো গান পাই কিনা। ড্রপটা পূরণ করতে হবে, সে পর্যন্ত এনিমি না আসলেই হয়। ওকে গাইস, ড্রপ পূরণ হচ্ছে, দেখা যাক কতক্ষণ সময় লাগে গাইস। ওকে গাইস, ডান দিক থেকে আমাদের ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছে। আমরা এখান থেকে চলে যাই, আমাদের জন্য ভালো হবে। ওকে গাইস, এটা আমাদের টিমমেট, আমি ভুলে পেয়েছি। ওকে গাইস, একটু জন্য বেঁচে গেছে, আমাদের অপোনেন্ট চলে এসেছিলো আমাদের সামনেই। ওকে গাইস, 180 ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছে, তারা আমাদের ড্যামেজ দেওয়া শুরু করেছে। আমি আমাদের অপোনেন্টের সামনে থেকে চলে এসেছি বেগে। গ্যাস, দেখা যাক উপরে চলে যাব। ইয়াপ, উপরে চলে এসেছে অবশেষে। লেটস গো গাইস, একেবারে উপরে যাওয়ার ট্রাই করব। দেখা যাক গাইস, উপর থেকে কাউকে ড্যামেজ দিয়ে নক করতে পারি কিনা। ওকে গাইস, একটা প্লেয়ারকে দেখেছি গাইস, বাট জুমে আসছে না, সে চলে গেল। ওকে গাইস, সে ওই পাশে গিয়েছে, নো প্রবলেম। দেখা যাক গাইস, ওকে হেডশট দিতে পারি কিনা। অ্যান্ড হেডশট, ইয়াপ গাইস, লেটস গো। তাকে হেডশট দিয়ে দিয়েছে, দেখা যাক ওকে ক্লিয়ার করবো। ও গাইস, এটা আমার ভুল সিদ্ধান্ত ছিল নিচে আসা। একটা প্লেয়ারকে ড্যামেজ দিয়েছে, দুটো প্লেয়ার মিলে আমাদের হারিয়ে দিয়েছে গাইস, কি আর বলবো। এ পাশে আসার পর আমরা নকডাউন হয়েছি গাইস। আমাদের লাস্ট প্লেয়ার, দেখা যাক গাইস ও কি করতে পারে। ওকে পারবে 3টা প্লেয়ারকে হারাতে, সেটাই দেখার বিষয় গাইস। আমার মনে হয় না আরিফ ভাই কি পারবে আমাদের ম্যাচটি জিতাতে। ও গাইস, সেজন্য পড়ে গেছে, দুঃখের বিষয়, এবং সেজন্যই হারিয়ে গেছে গাইস। ওকে গাইস, এখনও চান্স আছে, সে যদি নক করতে পারে। হেরে গেছে গাইস। ওকে গাইস, এই ছিল আমাদের ম্যাচ। দেখা হবে অন্য কোনো ম্যাচে গাইস, কি আর বলবো, এলিমিনেট হয়ে গেছে। ওকে গাইস, দেখা যাক এখানে কিছু দিয়েছে, সেগুলো চেক করে নেওয়া যাক গাইস ইভেন্ট সেকশনে। ওকে গাইস, এখানে কিছু কয়েন দিয়েছে, হেল্প আপ টিমমেট 2 টাইমস, ওকে গাইস এটাও দিয়েছে। এখানেও মাশরুম এটা দিয়েছে গাইস, এখানে দিয়েছে 2টি কয়েন। ওকে গাইস, ইউজ স্নাইপার ডায়াল 500 ড্যামেজ এটাও দিয়েছে গাইস। ওকে গাইস, দ্বিতীয় সেকশনটা পূরণ করে দিয়েছি, লেটস গো। গাইস, আজকের এতটুকু, বাকিটুকু পরের অংশে সীমান্ত। বাই গাইস। হ্যালো হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ গাইস, ওয়েলকাম টু আনাদার ব্র্যান্ড নিউ ভিডিও। চলে এসেছি নতুন একটা ভিডিও নিয়ে। সো গাইস, উইথাউট ওয়েস্টিং এনি মোর টাইম, লেটস স্টার্ট আউট টুডেস ভিডিও। দেখা যাক গাইস, আমরা কি পারবো এবার ম্যাচটি উইন করতে। গাইস, আমরা এসে পড়েছি ম্যাপের ভেতরে। দেখা যাক গাইস, আমরা কোথায় নামতে পারি। লেটস সি। ওকে গাইস, আমরা পিকে চলে যাব, নির্দিষ্ট নিয়েছে গাইস, পিকের দিকে রওনা দিচ্ছি গাইস, লেটস গো। ওকে গাইস, দেখা যাক কি হয়, আমরা কি পারবো এবার ম্যাচ উইন করতে গাইস। এখানে 19 মিনিট দেখাচ্ছে, লেটস সি। প্যারাশুট খুলে নিলাম গাইস। ওকে গাইস, অবশ্যই জিতে গিয়েছি। টেস্টিং ম্যাচ খেলছি গাইস, নো প্রবলেম। প্রথম রাউন্ড টেস্টিং খেলবো, পরে আবার খেলবো, নো প্রবলেম। ওকে গাইস, এখানে এখন গান পাইনি। ওকে গাইস, ম্যাক্স 7 পেয়ে গিয়েছে। এখানে একটা মিশন রয়েছে, মিশনটা অন করে নিই। ওকে গাইস, এগুলো আমাদের রাস্তা দেখাচ্ছে। ওকে গাইস, এখান থেকে গান নিয়ে নিলাম। ওকে গাইস, এসে পড়ছে, আমাদের অপোনেন্ট চলে এসেছে গাইস, ভাবা যায়। ও ভাই সাব, খুব বড় রাক্ষস এসে পড়েছে, ওকে হারাতে হবে গাইস। ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছে কিছু, এগেন ড্যামেজ দিচ্ছি গাইস, ফুল ড্যামেজ। সেও আমাদের ড্যামেজ দিচ্ছে গাইস। ইয়াপ, এগেন ড্যামেজ, প্রচুর ড্যামেজ দিচ্ছে গাইস। দেখা যাক সে কি, আমরা পারবো তাকে হারাতে। ইয়াপ গাইস, ওকে গাইস, গুলি করছি, প্রচুর ড্যামেজ দিচ্ছি গাইস। আমাদের গুলির এমন শেষ হয়ে গেছে, ম্যাক্সিমাম দিয়ে মারতে হবে গাইস। সে ড্যামেজ দিচ্ছে প্রচুর, আমরা কি পারবো ওকে হারাতে গাইস? ফুল ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছে গাইস। দেখছি একটু বাকি, দেখা যাক গাইস। MP5 নিয়ে নিচ্ছি অ্যান্ড তাকে হারিয়ে দিয়েছে গাইস। লেটস গো, দেখা যাক গাইস। ইয়াপ, আমরা আমাদের SBD নিয়ে নিয়েছি ড্রাগনক গাইস। লেটস গো, মেডিকেট করে নিই কিছু। লেটস গো গাইস। ওকে, এখান থেকে লুট নিয়ে নিই, আরও লুট রয়েছে গাইস, এখানে অনেক লুট রয়েছে। ওকে গাইস, MP5টা নিয়ে নিব। ইয়াপ, এখানে কিছু টোকেন রয়েছে গাইস, টোকেনগুলো নিয়ে নিই। এখানেও কিছু টোকেন রয়েছে গাইস, মেডিকেটটা নিয়ে নিই। ওকে গাইস, দেখা যাক। ওখানে একটা এনিমির মতো দেখা এলো, সেখানে গিয়ে দেখে গাইস। ওকে গাইস, আজকের নাতটুকু বাকিটুকু পড়ুন গাইস। ওয়েলকাম টু আনাদার ব্র্যান্ড নিউ ভিডিও। চলে এসেছি নতুন একটা ভিডিও নিয়ে। সো গাইস, দেখা যাক। একটা এনিমির সাউন্ড পাচ্ছে গাইস, দেখা যাক ওকে কি পারবো হারাতে। ওকে গাইস, দেখে নিয়েছি। ওকে দেখে দেখা যাক ওকে হারাতে পারি কিনা। ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছি এবং ড্রাগন দিয়ে হারিয়ে দিয়েছে গাইস তাকে। ইয়াপ, উল্লুর পথে যাওয়া যাক। ওকে গাইস, একটা অপোনেন্ট চলে আসছে সামনে, ড্যামেজ দিয়েছি গাইস এবং সে আমাদের হারিয়ে দিয়েছে। ভাবা যায় গাইস, মুমিন আমাদের হারিয়ে দিয়েছে গাইস। গাইস, এই ছিল আমাদের প্রথম ম্যাচটি। ওকে গাইস, দেখা যাক আমাদের আবার ইভেন্ট পূর্ণ হয়েছে। দেখা যাক কি দিয়েছে গাইস। কে গাইস, এখানে ওকে কিছু ক্লাইম করার জন্য দিয়েছে। এবার পূর্ণ হলে আমাদের আরও 1000 কয়েন দিবে গাইস। দেখছি 400 কোন মিশন, কিছু মিশন পূর্ণ হয়েছে গাইস, ক্লাইম করে নিই। ইয়াপ, লেটস গো। দেখা যাক গাইস এখানে কিছু পাই কিনা গাইস। কিছু তো রয়েছে দেওয়ার মতো। ওকে গাইস, কিছু ম্যাজিক কিউবের গুঁড়া পেয়েছি গাইস, একটা পেট ফুড পেয়েছি, গান স্কিন পেয়েছি 24 ঘন্টার জন্য। এই কোপটা নিব। তারপর একটা বান্টি টোকেন দিয়েছে গাইস। এই ছিল। ওকে গাইস, এখান থেকে বান্টি টোকেন সিলেক্ট করে নেব। বান্টি টোকেন নেব নাকি স্ক্যানার নেব বুঝতে পারছি না গাইস। ব্যাকপ্যাক রয়েছে গাইস, এয়ারড্রপ নিয়ে নিলাম। লেটস গো ফর অ্যানাদার ফাইট গাইস। আর একটা ম্যাচ খেলা যাক। ওকে গাইস, লেটস গো। এস্টিমেট 25 গাইস, 25 সেকেন্ডের মধ্যে স্টার্ট হয়ে যাবে। 17, 18, 19, 20, দেখা যাক গাইস কতক্ষণ সময় লাগে। আমরা একটু ডান্স করে নিয়ে গাইস। ইয়োপ 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 ইয়াপ গাইস, আর একটু ইমোট দেখিয়ে নেই। ম্যাচ মেকিং চলছে গাইস, দেখা যাক কতক্ষণ সময় লাগে। গাইস, অবশেষে আমাদের ম্যাচ মেকিং পূর্ণ হয়ে গেছে, আমরা গেমে ঢুকে গেছি গাইস। আজকের এতটুকুই, আবার দেখা হবে গেমে গাইস। এই হলো আমাদের লবি গাইস। সবাইকে ড্যামেজ দেওয়া যাক। ইয়াপ 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 ইয়াপ, ড্যামেজ দিয়ে দিয়েছে সবাইকে, হেডশট মেরে দিব গাইস। ইয়াপ গাইস, আজকের এতটুকু, বাকিটা পরের অংশে সে বন্ধু।